Hey everyone, Enrique here. Welcome to another episode of the All In Recruiting Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and thank you all for like the 10 people that have been watching the other episodes. Pretty cool. Okay, we're going to get straight into it today. There's a lot of things to talk about. Super excited about future podcasts, but today it's kind of like, think of it like a news section today in recruiting, kind of business leadership. There's a lot of things happening this week. The big news to drop this week in the world that kind of connects to recruiting is that Amazon is basically saying, hey, we have to come back to the office. And that has been there's been a big uproar online. I follow a lot of people and there's a lot of opinions out there. What I want to talk about specifically today is three different things. How can we balance like the flexibility of kind of the workforce and kind of how companies can control that flexibility. And want to talk about the kind of productivity of employees and like how people feel about being productive, whether it's home or at the office, and how that affects retention. Um, and just kind of the implications of corporate culture when it comes to like this kind of in a way swinging back to how things were before COVID. So that's the first thing I want to talk about, and I also want to talk about the next topic. Is another big thing in the news is Elliott Hill, former Nike leader, is coming back to Nike, and Mr. Donahue, the current leader, is going to be retiring from Nike. So there, I want to talk about kind of leadership, the different continuity of culture. I want to talk about the impact on Nike's strategic growth and how kind of that can kind of happen now moving forward. And again, I want to connect it to kind of as Elliott comes back, kind of how do you navigate reentry into your company where you used to work? And is that normal nowadays? Do we see that? And I really want to connect both of these topics together because I feel like there's a lot of kind of similar things around leadership and culture, changing in expectations in the work and the leadership, and kind of the adapting, like the adaptation of what can be, what should be, and then what's tradition, what is traditionally happening in corporate America. So let's start off with the first topic. Amazon saying we're going back to the office starting next year. Okay, want to talk about the topic of the example I give people when I talk about like what it is today and what it was back in the day. I always think of it as COVID is like the marker. Before COVID, post COVID. I think before COVID, there was much less flexibility around kind of the work and when you can be at work. And I think since COVID, we've all learned that we can work from home and still be productive. Now, I think there's a lot of things that have changed, and a lot of the businesses have kind of learned to it's kind of like a rebalancing that's happening now. And so I think what's happening is we know we can't go back. I think people realize we can't go back to how it was. It's kind of like when your kiddos are young, or when you were young, you kind of believed in Santa at some point, and at some point you or your kiddos like realize that Santa is not real. And at that point in time, you can't go back and still believe that Santa's real. That's kind of how I feel about how things are now. We know that people can work from home. It's like it's possible. But like now we're trying to go back to how that is. So I think companies are realizing there's different economic kind of parts to it, like the real estate part, making sure that people are coming into the office to keep the building in, filled with people. But I think we really got to think and ask ourselves, like, where's the balance of flexibility? I was on a panel a few months ago, and someone asked me the question of like, Enrique, I want to apply to this job. but I don't want to work in the office. And they say that you're expected to be in the office like 3 days a week or something like that. And I think the person was expecting for me to say, yeah, like apply to the job and tell them to let you work there and give you an accommodation. And I think I told him, like, listen, don't apply to that job. Like, don't apply to that job because it's not going to be what you need. So I think there needs to be kind of like this middle ground where companies need to figure out what their business need is. I think there's some companies that need people to be in the office. I think there's some companies that don't need people to be in the office. And I think we have to be able to be comfortable with the in between, somewhere in the middle. Like we have to balance the flexibility. And each company, every single company is going to be different. There is no one size fits all. Another thing we got to, I want to talk about is this idea of productivity connected to employee retention. I think there's so many things around data points around productivity. Some people say I'm more productive at home. Some people say I'm more productive at the office. Again, there's no one size fits all. We have to understand. Companies need to understand what is it that will make my company the best company it can be. Aside from whatever the opinion of the thought is, like you have to know what is it that's going to be best for your company, and that is what you have to present to the external outside world of like this is how we are doing it post COVID, right? This is how we're going to do business. And I believe that people will want that kind of thing, like that kind of, whether it's hybrid or working from home or working fully in the office. There's so many people out there and there's so many jobs out there. I think sometimes we talk about these things in like absolutes, like companies need to have this kind of thing or that. I just think there has to be a middle ground, and you have to find the right people to want that kind of schedule, that kind of um, you know belief in I can be productive and I will stick around if this is what's gonna, like, as long as the expectations are there. If your company says this is where we stand, this is what we do, and if people are like reading that and they feel that that's what they want, then that will be like a really good match. So, for recruiters, hiring managers out there, companies out there, put it out there. Put out there what you are trying to do, how you're trying to be, so that people know what to expect. So that I don't get these people when I'm on panels like, oh, the company should bend to my needs. Like, no, I'm sorry to break it to you, but no, companies don't need to bend to you. Companies need to understand how they need to operate, what they need to do to be the most profitable, whatever their goals are, and put that out there so that people can feel that and then they can say yes or no. Right. So, um, the last thing on this topic is, it's gonna affect culture, especially, a lot of the companies that are doing this or, come back to the office or tech companies. Um, I think specifically with Amazon, man, it's just such a big organization, and especially where it has headquarters in Seattle, where I'm close to. There's there's gonna be a change in the culture, right? There's gonna be people that have been with the company for a long time. There's gonna be people that have been company just short during COVID, post COVID, where they're gonna feel a certain kind of way. They're gonna have a certain kind of opinion on like, oh man, like there's gonna be a lot of emotion around this. And I think what companies ought to do is make sure that they have the right people in the leadership seats so that the company can kind of maintain some kind of solid culture. If companies like Amazon want to make people come back to the office, and perhaps some teams are going to be different, internal teams are going to be different, like who knows. But what's out there is out there is like, oh, we got to go back to the office. You have to somehow keep culture intact. So again, it kind of goes back to this idea of, if you don't want to work for a company like that, you don't have to work for a company like that. Look for a different job, find a different job, go work somewhere else. Like, there, it's, you gotta be in it with the company. if you're not down with what they're trying to do, no one is holding you there hostage. Like, go and look for a different job, different opportunities. I know it's easy for me to say, but you you have to be able to understand the realities of business. If companies like Amazon, that size of company, are making this call, it's probably not some person being like, this is what I want to do because I'm a big wig here at this company. Like, it's a big business decision. There's so many different parts to the decision that is making it so that they're doing this. It's not just a flippant decision. It's economics, it's the location, the geography, it's all these things combined, and it's for the business. At the end of the day, these companies need believe that if you are here, we are going to probably make more money. So my hope is for that the culture of these companies kind of maybe does a little bit of a reset and kind of moves forward in a positive way. Okay, the next topic I want to talk about in the news of business and recruiting is Elliott Hill is coming back to Nike. Big, this is big. I mean, I kind of, I will say, I was with the person that I share a workspace with. We kind of called it. We kind of said, hey, I don't know if Donahue is going to be around much longer. You kind of saw a little bit of the writing on the wall whenever you see companies and their stock price takes a hit or quarterly earnings, and it's been a rough season for Nike. I think there's a lot of different competitors out there that are kind of chomping at the bit to compete with companies like Nike, and they're competing. I mean, they're taking the market share of the company, and they're using. It's funny. It's ironic. They're using the Nike playbook, the grassroots Nike playbook, to compete with the company. So when you're struggling on that stock, I mean, you gotta make money. Like, it's kind of the whole goal of being a for-profit kind of big old company, right? Nike is one of the most prominent brands in the world. You know, if if your stock is on the struggle bus and you got to cut costs, there's been a tons of layoffs at Nike. I mean, a lot of my friends have been laid off at Nike. The writing on the wall is to to Mr. Donahue. I mean, I've never met Mr. Donahue, but seems like a nice person. I mean, it's a bummer, but that is kind of what happens with big companies like that, right? So Donahue's retiring from Nike. Hey, wish him the best. It's crazy. I could not have thought of anyone better than Elliott Hill. And there's a lot of people on LinkedIn and stuff like that giving him shout outs, and I just want to give you a little bit of my take. I met Elliott Hill when I worked at Nike back in a long time ago. And I was kind of like in this little fireside chat with him. And I remember asking him a question about leadership. I raised my hand. I'm always that guy asking leadership questions. And man, I mean, I don't remember his exact answer, but I do remember the impression he left on me was that of humility, uh, ability to answer my question in a way that made me feel like he actually heard the question. He's never met me. I'm a nobody to this guy. Like, Elliott Hill, if you look at his resume, he started as an intern at Nike, and he just has led such a great like career at Nike. I think he left, did some work in Texas and things like that. Um, and I just think what a cool story. What a cool like just story of like the comeback kid, right? And I think my hope is that Nike is better for it. I mean, I live in Oregon, and Nike's in my backyard, so it's kind of I see a lot of things from Nike, and I just hope that what I felt from him in that meeting, that kind of genuine, authentic spirit, I hope that he brings that back. I think there's a reason why these companies like Hoka or On or um, all these other cool companies that are up and coming. There's a reason why they're winning market share. It's not because you know there's a reason why Nike has lost that market share. And I think my short stint at Nike taught me that there is a uniqueness to working at a company like Nike and propelling a company like Nike forward as a brand, as a company. And I think having someone like Elliott Hill at the helm will be a net ultra positive because I mean, look at the post on LinkedIn about like everyone felt a lot of people have felt what I have felt. What I felt in that meeting was like, whoa, there's something special about this guy. Um, there's a leadership guy that talks about different levels of leadership. And Jim Maxwell, Jim Collins, John Maxwell, one of these guys talks about the different levels of leadership, and the highest level is level 5. Level 5 leadership is like the ultimate, like you're like the leader of the company, but you're like, you have it all. You have the charisma, you have the ability to get all the things, right? Elliott Hill is one of the few people in my life that I think is level 5. He just has it. He just has the it factor. A lot of times people talk about presidents having the it factor. I feel like Elliott Hill has that. And I was lucky to meet him one day, and I really hope that Nike just goes and just keeps crushing it, does a good job. But the 3 points I want to touch on about this Elliott Hill kind of come back to Nike is how, as you come back, as in this new stage, with Elliott Hill, I'm always curious, like, how is leadership gonna kind of continue, and how is leadership gonna evolve? I think culture is gonna kind of have a new face to it. I'm super curious how Nike's gonna grow. I think one of the things that people always say, like, well, Nike doesn't innovate anymore. Nike doesn't do. I think we're gonna see probably new things, new ideas come to light from Nike, which would be pretty cool. So how is this, like, changing of this leader going to impact Nike's strategic growth? Super curious about that. And then, I mean, super curious about how do you come back to your company, right? You were at this company for so many years. You leave for a little while, and what's it like to come back? What are the challenges? Um, will he kind of come back with a little bit of a, hey, like, we're gonna keep it how it is, or how do you re-enter into the company where you used to work and re-enter with like poise and leadership to kind of change things? I think the re-entry is really, really a curious thing in my mind, because people do it sometimes in a regular job, right? Like, I see it a lot on LinkedIn where it's like, you worked at this company, you went somewhere else for like a year and a half, and you come back to this company. So super interested to see how he comes back and how he makes impact. So how do these two things connect? How does Amazon return to work, right? It's a big tensions thing. People are throwing all kinds of haymakers online about it. And how does Elliott Hill come back to Nike? How do these two worlds connect? It's kind of simple. There's 3 different things. One is leadership and culture. Both stories kind of reflect on this corporate trend of kind of leadership having more of a presence. Kind of Elliott Hill coming back to the helm, and Amazon saying, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're coming back to the office. The next thing is the change in expectations in leadership. So, like, how, like, the fact that Amazon is saying, hey, we're going back, like, that's a leadership stance. It's not just like, hey, can we talk about going back? Do you guys want to talk about maybe going back to it's like, hey, this is what we're doing. It's a leadership stance. It's like the expectations are different now. They're going to be different. And with Elliott Hill, we're still kind of yet to know how he's going to come back, but I think it's going to change the expectations of people. So sometimes, maybe the Amazon is less positive, and sometimes the expectations are a little bit less positive in that realm, because again, it's not how it was before. We know we can work from home, so there's a lot of turmoil there where it's with Elliott Hill coming back, it's the change in expectations. Like it's like this positive. We're awaiting the return of this prodigal son, I guess you could say. And then the last point I want to talk about is just kind of this idea of like adaptation, like adapting to the change, and tradition, right? How do we adapt to change in today's market, in today's world of like live in reality, right? Like we can work from home. We can actually do that. We don't have to commute to, an hour or whatever, however long it is when you're commuting to work. Like, how do we adapt to that? But how do we maintain that tradition of being workers and being co-workers and sharing a space and going to work and having that, like these worlds are starting to clash. And I'm super curious. I hope to have some guests to talk about this, but I'm super curious to like how these two things collide, adaptation to the new and keeping of tradition. Should we keep it? Should we just go back to the same and just 9 to 5, Monday to Friday? Or is there a middle ground, kind of how I started? Is there a middle ground to how we can be employees and how companies can say, hey, this is our world. Do you want to work in this world? Because this is how we do it. And I think if companies, this is my call to action to companies. My call to action to companies is to give it all away. Tell people what your model is, hybrid, remote, whatever it is. Tell people what it is. Tell people what the expectation is. Share with people, like, this is the ins and outs about how we do the balancing of the life that you want to live and the work that we need to do at this company. Give it all away. Communicate it in your job postings. Communicate it in your website. Communicate it in the interview process. Communicate it all the way through so that you don't hire someone and they're like, oh, I didn't know this. I'm out. First month out. First month in, first month out. I recommend you give it all away, because that will win you the people that want that. The people that are looking for that will come and they will apply. And think about it, there's a lot of people out there. So I'm sure you'll get the people. My call to action to the applicant, to the person looking for the job, my call to action to you, and I know this might be, not the most popular opinion, but you have to know what you want and go get what you want. If a company doesn't align with what you want, don't go work for that company. It's not going to be good for you or them long term. Know what you want. Know what you need. Self-reflect with yourself and say, where am I in life? I was just talking to a friend this week. I told them, listen, they're looking to like transition out of where they're working. And I said, listen, you got to know where you are right now, point in time. Do you have a family, no family, responsibilities, things that you got to do? Like, depending on where you are in life, depending on that will give you your starting point. Like, okay, what kind of work should I do? Can I work from home? Do I want to work from home? Do I want to go in? Can I go into the office? Maybe I have responsibilities that I need to take care of, during the day. Maybe I'm going to look for a company that lets me be a little more flexible, right? Like, know what you want. Know what you want for yourself, for your life at this point in time, so that you can look for that. Don't be like this person that was in this conference I went to a while back where they wanted the company to bend to them. I'm sorry to break it to you, but that is not the reality of the world we live in today. Companies are not going to bend to you before you even work there. You know what I'm saying? So know what you want, exactly kind of the best picture for you, and look for that. Look for the companies that are saying that that's what they're doing, that's what they're about. This, the work-life balance, schedule, all that stuff, the pay. Know what you want and go look for that. It takes effort, it takes time. I know, I've been there, but you can do it. So those are the big news. Returning to work, and I think this companies like Amazon are kind of leading the way. I think that's going to become more of a trend. I think we're going to go back a little bit more to kind of how it was than not. So like I said, I hope we find a middle ground for the new normal. So yeah, Amazon return to work. Big news. Big people still talking about it on the news. And Elliott Hill coming back. Yes. What a great guy. Elliott, if you see this, come be on the pod. Come talk to us about your vision and what you're looking for at Nike and kind of what your mission, kind of new Nike moving forward will be. If someone knows Elliott, tag him. Elliott, come on through to the pod. I'll host you. Go have lunch after. Anyways, thank you all for listening so much. This is so much fun. Thank you for the 10 views for the other videos. That's great. Subscribe, tell your friends about this podcast. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.